Hi, this is Simon Obsdale and welcome to another tutorial for Blender. And this is part 4 of a multi-part tutorial in which we take a look at how I went about creating this steampunk fish scene. And in each part we'll be taking a look at a different component of the build. So let's get into it. So this is where we left things last time around. The only thing I've done is I've made a couple of new collections. One to hold the cutters so we can easily keep them invisible, and the other to contain everything that we've built so far. And so in the main collection we've just got our camera light and reference image. So there's one thing I want to do before we tackle the main task of this tutorial, which is this dorsal fin, and that's to do a little bit extra work on the body. So let's select the body, let's come into edit mode, and what we need to do really is to sort out this area here. First thing I'm going to do is grab these two faces here like that, and then actually let's turn on x-ray mode. It's probably easy to see, and I'm going to pull them a long way out like that. I'll need to do a bit of adjustment here as well. Then I'm going to come into vertices mode, and I need to focus on these two vertices here, this one and this one. It's easiest to see it again from this high angle view, and we're just going to move them out like this. So this one and this one. Hope you can understand which ones we're talking about here. Just a question of getting a smoother curve out here, and I think that's going to be good. Just adjust these two edges to get a better shape there. So that's us done on the body for now, and let's turn everything off in the built collection and let's focus on the dorsal fin. So the basic principle is one you're now very familiar with. We're going to add a plane, we're going to rotate it through 90 degrees on X, and we're just going to move it roughly into the position we want. We're in x-ray mode obviously. I'm going to speed on through this because you know exactly what we need to do. For these pillars, we need to create faces that we can extrude. So all of those pillars, similarly for this central area and also for this pillar here. The only thing I'm not going to do immediately is these extra I'm going to make an extra triangle on the front here, but this extra triangle at the back, I'm going to ignore that just for the time being. So I'm going to get down to it, and I'll catch you when it's done. So now, as you can see, I've roughed out the positions of those faces. Let's come into the modifiers tab and add our subdivision surface. We also need to add some loop cuts for these indentations here. So let's do that now and then quickly adjust those. Then we need to sharpen up the bottom edge here a bit. So let's come into the loop cut tool again and let's drag down a loop cut like that. Don't go all the way to the bottom, you don't need to do that, and it'll only confuse things if you do. And similarly, I think we can just sharpen up the top. Again, don't go all the way. So then let's do our extrusions. We need to grab all three of these faces here, like this. And then let's actually just come to the top view maybe, and let's just do it by eye, I think. Just a tiny amount like that. What that's about let's go for 0.05 there. And let's select this big hub here. Again, select all three of those faces. And again, let's come to the top view and do it by eye. Come out to around here, I think. A nice big fat chunky hub there. We just need to tidy that one up a little bit because it's a little bit too rounded. So we can add another couple of loop cuts just on the edges there. Again, I want to keep it a little bit rounded, so don't go all the way to the corners. So let's turn our built items back on again so we can see everything in context. And then if we come to x-ray mode and look at the front orthographic view, you'll realize that, or I will realize, maybe you've been more sensible, that because I was using the original drawing reference, it wasn't actually matching the new geometry of the body. So what we can do is we can come into vertices mode, make sure we're in x-ray mode here, grab all of these, use the rotate tool to rotate them around a bit like that, and then the move tool to move them across a bit like that. Maybe move these back a little bit. Doesn't have to be exactly the same as the guide. And then we can just do a little bit of finessing to make sure these are a little bit closer to the actual main body like this. So we are actually going to do some more finessing of these points, but first of all, I just want to make the finials, the end bits of the fins. So let's come into edges mode. I want to come into here and I want to grab this back edge, also that little one at the bottom there. And then I want to hit E and X and just extrude it out like that. We need to make sure it's kind of in that plane, which is why I've done it this way. Then we can come back into vertices mode and we can move these down like this. Now, the interesting thing about this one is that we can actually do quite a lot again with his personality, depending on how we position this central one. We can go sort of like pretty sort of mean like that, or there's a lot of kind of options there. So I don't know, let's go with that. But just wanted to point out that, again, just in manipulating the geometry, you can actually create quite a bit of extra character. Let's do the same thing on the back here. Let's switch into edges mode. We need to grab this one and this one here. So that's at the back. Again, I'm going to extrude it on X, E, X, and extrude it like that. Just keeps everything in line. And then I can switch to vertices mode and position them where I want them. So down here, and this one again, we can do whatever we want with the profile. Maybe we want that. Actually, but let's go with that. Let's see how that balances out with that. It's probably quite nice, isn't it? We've kind of got a different profile on either end. So pretty good, I think. So once you're happy with your model, we can move on to the next step. Now, I want you to come over to the snap menu, and as before, we'll be using face nearest move down there. So let's turn on snap. Let's come into edges mode. Let's turn off X-ray mode to make it a little easier to see. I'm going to grab this bottom edge here and I'm going to drag it forward. And if you'll see as I do so, it's kind of snapping to the surface of the body. And that's really, really nice to be able to do that, because it's a much more sort of fluid result than if I tried to kind of do it all manually. So I'm going to do the same thing with these posts here. I am going to kind of come in once I've done it and delete the bottom face, and that's going to get rid of this sort of edge here, but let's just do this now. So I'm going to drag that forward, and you see it creates a really nice little lip there. Probably do a little bit of sort of XY adjustment like that, but we're going to do that on all of them. So grab this bottom face, drag it forward and left and right as necessary, drag it forward, left and right as necessary. And the same thing with this one, drag it forward like so. And that's a really nice little detail, I think, that we've got for not very much effort. So as I say, what we want to do is we want to delete the underside faces. So let's come into faces mode and let's just turn off our main build here. You know how to do this. Let's just turn off subdivision and let's select all the faces that we want to delete. So this one, this one, this one. The three in the middle like that, and then this one here, X, and delete faces, and switch back to subdivision mode and turn everything back on again, and we're looking like this. And that's pretty neat and tidy. There's just one thing that's not quite as tidy as I'd like, and this is front edge here, and I can fix that by selecting this face. So in faces mode, select the face, right click, subdivide, and it'll give us, if we isolate it, a vertex at the front that we can manipulate. So let's turn back on our build there and make sure we're in the move tool. We can just, I think, just move it up is probably the answer. So there you go. As we move it up, it's really sorted that problem out. We've got a much nicer, smoother profile there. So just one more thing I'd like to do before we finish this section, and that's to add the balls that sit on top of these four posts. So to create a ball, let's come into object mode, let's add mesh and UV sphere, and let's set the radius to 0.05. Just going to turn off snapping very briefly, but we are going to be using snapping here. Just going to move it roughly over one of these, turn snapping back on again. So remember, we're in face nearest, and I'm just going to move it down. Oh, and you see it's really nicely just pinged itself onto the top of that post without my having to bother too much about it, and I can just move it left and right until it's in a good position. I can do Shift D and then, oh, look at that. Isn't that nice? I love the way it does that. It just sort of slides around the curve like that. That's great. Shift D slides around the curve to there. They're not entirely correctly aligned on Y, and we can fix that, but hey, this is just too much fun. Let's carry on. And then Shift D, and oh, it goes all the way around like that. It's great. I just love it. It's like a little roller coaster. And all we need to do is make sure we've got N for the sidebar here, set their Y position to 0. So do that for all of them just to make sure they're at 0. And there you go. We've got our balls. Wasn't that fun? I really enjoyed that bit. I don't know why. So anyway, I think that's a very good place to finish part 4. I hope you can join me for the next one, when I think we'll be looking at the propeller assembly and quite a bit else besides. So I hope you can join me for that one.